It's time for The Story Behind the Person, featuring lively, in-depth conversation with compelling guests from our community. And here is our host, Jonathan vanBilsen.
Hello and welcome. You'll notice a different set from our regular shows, and that's because we're recording on a stage of the Town Hall Theatre in Port Perry in front of a live audience. This is part of the 150th celebration of this wonderful old building. Our guest today is Graeme Powell, who's not only acted in numerous productions, but has also written a few. We'll be right back after these messages.
Top care with top stylists. Book your next hair appointment with Port Perry's award-winning hair salon, Rosario Greco Styles. The hair experience you deserve. Book today. Call 905-985-0099.
Not all Canadians have the time nor desire to manage their finances, and often that responsibility is up to financial professionals. Our goal is to help Canadian families achieve a happy and successful financial future. Visit us, the McClellan Financial Group of Asante Capital Management.
Welcome back. My guest today, as I mentioned, is Graeme Powell. He's not only an actor, but he's also a playwright. Graeme, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
This is great. I think the first time I saw you in a production must have been about a dozen or so years ago. I can't recall what it was, but I remember thinking, oh, I want to be him. I want to be on stage. I want to be an actor. It was fantastic. So let's dig a little bit into your past history. Are you originally from this area?
Well, I wasn't born here, so I can't claim to be a native Port Perrian.
Right.
But I was ever since I was 5. My parents moved here when I was 5.
I think you qualified.
So yeah, I think so. Went to Epsom Public School and then S.A. Cocker and Port Perry High School. So yeah, I consider Port Perry to be my hometown.
And your acting career started when? I mean, we all act as all of every day of our lives, but as far as acting for something beyond that, how old would you have been when you got into that?
Well, it's interesting because I, as a kid and as a teenager, even into university, I never wanted to be an actor. I never thought I was going to be an actor. And I remember it was 2005, and I was at home, and I was looking through one of the local papers. They had an audition notice. It was for Brilliance Community Theatre, which is an open call, and they were doing a play. They needed 3 guys for the play. And I just sort of casually remarked to my wife, Sarah, I said, oh, it'd be fun to do a play.
Right.
And she said, well, why don't you audition for it?
Right.
So I did. And I remember the audition process. I had no idea what I was doing. Yeah. And I just went and I got a call back. And at the callback, there were 2 actors from Toronto. They were 2 young actors, and they had actually done the play that we were auditioning for. They had already done it at their whatever school they'd gone to. So they knew all the lines. They had all the blocking. They knew the characters.
Right.
So I remember just sitting there in the callback, and I was watching them do this scene. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's it. You know, there's no way they're going to cast me in this part. So I went home, and I didn't think much else about it. Right. And a couple days later, I got a call from the stage manager, and she said, would you be able to come to the director's house and read the whole script with 2 other cast members on this date?
Wow.
And I said, actually, I can't make that date.
Uh-oh.
And so she said, oh, okay, well, thanks for your time. and hung up. So I thought, oh, okay. Well, and then a few minutes later, she called me back and said, what if we did it the next night? Could you make it then? And I said, yeah, I can do that.
Wow.
So I went to the director's house, and we read the whole play. And at the end, she said, would you like to be in the play? And I said, sure, I'll do that.
Really?
And so that was sort of my introduction to community theater. And it's just sort of, and after that, I did more plays, and it just sort of became the thing that I did.
You had no formal acting training.
No formal acting training, no. Exactly.
The interesting thing is that I think a lot of people think of community theater as, dancing and singing and things like that. But I remember I watched a production of Soldier's Heart, and I had tears in my eyes. I mean, it was very emotional. And so growing up, you got into this. Were you in any musicals or any productions at high school or anything at all?
There was a couple of plays in high school that I did.
So you enjoyed it, right?
There was, and we were always making videos too. I mean, I was more in the film video end of things.
Because your day job, if I can use that word, is editing, correct?
Yeah, I do video editing. Yes.
Which in itself is quite a a challenge.
Yeah, there's a lot of
day and age.
technical things.
Yeah.
But I think actually the skills I've learned as an actor and a performer informs the editing.
Right.
I can construct a story, and when you're editing a lot of interviews and things like that, you see the good performances in the raw interview stuff. So you want to use the most dramatic things, the things that'll keep the audience interested.
Is your family into acting at all? Like, do you come from a background where music, No?
Not really, no. My grandfather was a storyteller,
Okay.
but he was not a performer.
Right.
But I always enjoyed listening to him tell stories about his past and about his experiences in the war and that kind of thing. He had a very I was always enraptured when he would tell a story. So I like to think that that's where some of my abilities came from.
Well, it's the delivery of a story, right? It's not the story itself that makes it. It's like when you're telling a joke to someone. Sometimes people laugh, sometimes they don't, and it's got nothing to do with the joke itself. It's the way you tell it.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Often the case.
Yeah.
I find a big difference between acting on a stage and acting in a video or a film production is that on a stage it's all in order. In video, it's never in order.
Right. Yes.
So it's easier for the chronological side of you to maintain. How difficult is it to learn your lines? Like in a show, in a TV program, you learn 2 or 3 lines and then you cut, right? But when you're doing a live theater, you got 2 hours of lines to learn. How difficult is that?
Yeah, it's I've never found it all that difficult. Now I haven't had to learn lines for it's been a few years.
Okay.
I haven't done a full production in a little while.
I thought you just made them up as you went along.
yeah, some people do, especially in community theater. Some people do make them up, and you have to, kind of work backwards sometimes.
Right.
But yeah, I find the hardest lines to learn are when you're in a scene and you don't have a lot of lines.
Right.
When it's just like a few lines here and there, and you have to interject.
Right.
The easier lines for me to learn are monologues.
Okay.
Because you just get into a flow. Right.
Right.
Those are easier to learn. So it's and a scene where there's a lot going on, a lot of coming and going. Those can be tricky. But
because it's not just the lines you have to learn, right? It's all the actions and the movements and everything too. Right?
Yeah, and ideally you want to learn the lines first, and then you can relate the actions to.
I'm sure you have
lines.
to. Sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but you also have to. You depend a lot on your co-stars, your fellow actors, because if they make a mistake on something, you can't just sort of stop and say, well, that's wrong. You have to keep going, right?
Yeah.
And I guess the blessing is the audience doesn't know what's coming next. So if it's not exactly the way it's written, nobody's going to know unless it's a big faux pas, right?
Exactly, yeah. And I have been in situations where things have just gone
really
a little crazy. Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah. Well, there was a play we did. This is a number of years ago. We had an actor who he wasn't experienced. This was maybe his first play that he'd done. And one of the other, there were 3 of us on stage, and the other actor gave him the wrong cue line.
Okay.
And you could see him. There was a deer in the headlights feeling. He looked at me, and I didn't have a line there, but I was like, oh, well, you remember that thing we used to do with the thing and the other thing, and then, try and get back on track. And so those moments, they only take a few seconds. The audience would never know. Right. But when you're on stage, it's like an hour.
It's an hour, of course.
It's just like
absolutely, and it's the only thing that stays with you. You remember that.
But the adrenaline of that is also fun. Like you come off stage and you're pumped up and you're laughing, and it's I don't go skydiving or anything like that, but the adrenaline of being on stage, that's enough for me.
Yeah. No, I get that. I mean, fortunately, most of the stuff I do is pre-recorded. Sometimes it's live in front of an audience, and if I do MC jobs or gigs and that sort of thing, the thing that comes to mind first for me is, why did I say that? Why did I say that sort of thing?
Yeah.
But so you've written plays, you've done productions. I saw one of them called Palmer Park, I believe, here with this massive gazebo right where we're sitting here.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to write a play? Like, why did you want to write a play?
Yeah, I'd always done creative writing as a kid. I was always writing stories, usually based off of movies that I'd seen. And after a few years in community theater, I just thought, well, I can write a play. Right. We had done some pretty big plays, Noel Coward and some other Pulitzer Prize winning things. I thought I could do this. So I just went into it the same way I did acting, not really knowing anything about how to do it. Right. So I wrote my first play, and fortunately I was able to get it into there was a little festival in Aurora, and they were taking new plays, and so you got to work with a theater professional,
right?
And then they would give you notes, and then they would do a staged reading of the play afterward. And I just remember some of the notes. They were all friendly notes, but some of the, reading back the notes that on that first draft of the play, and I'm thinking, oh wow, yeah, I really have to change that. I have to change that and that. And so I just fell in love with the process of writing the play. And then when you see the audience feedback,
well, it shows, right? Because the work that you've done is fantastic. You know, there's certainly nothing negative that I found in it. So I just wanted to touch on acting for a sec, because I mean, acting seems pretty simple to me. I can't do it.
Right.
But when you like, how do you do emotion? Like, how do you do that? How do I get emotion in my face?
Yeah. Yeah. There's some people. They use, a memory that they've experienced in order to sort of trigger an emotion, and I have tried that before, but there's a school of thought that says, well, you don't want to necessarily do that all the time, because then you're just sort of reliving past traumatic moments in your life.
Very sad, of course. Yeah, I can see that.
There's some people who, as I say, I'm not an acting teacher, but I've worked with a lot of acting teachers, a lot of actors in community theater who are drama teachers, right? And so actually sometimes to sort of call up an emotion, you say the emotion. Okay. So if the emotion is happiness, you say joy. Okay. And you can kind of sometimes saying the word will get you into that place.
I could say happy.
Yeah.
And I could say sad.
Yes.
So
you could, yes.
Yeah.
You do have to put a bit of, you have to think of
something happy
and something sad. One of the things that there's a technique, an exercise called repetition exercise. So if you're just coming into a rehearsal space with your scene partner and you don't really know them very well yet, I will say, you have a red tie.
Correct.
You say back to me, I have a red tie. But you're going to say it back to me, and you're going to try and mimic the way I say it.
All right, let's try this.
Okay. All right. You have a red tie.
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 I have a red tie.
So that's sort of like an introduction. This feels silly, right? Like you feel like
no, not at all.
What are we doing?
But I knew I had a yes.
Yes, you do have it. So and then sort of to build on that, we can have a whole conversation with a range of emotion. Okay. Just by saying that same line. So you can respond to me in any way that you want to respond. All right. And so I'll start off again.
Okay, I'm ready.
You have a red tie.
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 And my tie's nicer than yours.
But you have a red tie.
I can see where this is going to go. Some people are just not meant to act, and I might be one of those. Graeme, our time has come to an end, sadly. It's gone very quickly. Very much appreciated getting together with you, finding out a little bit about Graeme Powell. Well, thank you for being part of the show.
Been my pleasure, thanks.
And thank you all for watching. Please join us right after these messages for our next guest, Judy Anderson.
Pet Value has a fleet of services to help you and your pets to live their very best lives. Visit Pet Value in Port Perry to discover a world of expertise, friendly staff, and everything you need for your pets. Pet Value, your pet, your store.
Have a message to tell? Share it with high-end resolution video monitors, available for rent from PP Print. Customize your message and brand for all to see. PP Print, more than just printing.
At Voss, your independent grocer, it's all about hometown living and shopping. Owned and operated by Terry and Christine Voss, their newly renovated Port Perry store carries many local items to support our town and its residents.
Welcome back. That was a great segment with actor Graeme Powell. Our next guest is Judy Anderson, who's a musician amongst many other things. Judy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for calling me on.
So Every time I visit this theater, this beautiful theater, I see you. You're involved in every element of this show, whether it's on stage, whether it's front of house, whether it's whatever it takes, you seem to be involved in it. So is this a passion of yours, the whole theater thing?
It's really become a huge part of my life.
Right.
But it's because I know how to do so many things here that I find myself in the kitchen. I can make the coffee. I can run the lift.
Right,
so.
right. That's amazing. And it's I'm sure it's great for the town too, because these kind of functions need to be done. And I'm sure they don't pay you a whole lot of money for this, right? It's a labor of love.
Yeah. Volunteers, I've got it made.
Yeah.
Overworked and never paid.
That's a good slogan. So where are you from originally?
I was born and raised in Toronto.
Okay.
And I lived in the High Park area.
Oh.
And graduated from Humberside Collegiate.
Right.
And eventually, when Gary and I married, we bought a small house in the East End. And then it was too small, and where could we move? Pickering.
Right.
And then Pickering seemed awfully busy. And I came home from work one night, and the guys were sitting in the kitchen, and they said, well, it's either Uxbridge or Port Perry.
Really?
And we didn't know anybody in either of them, so I said, well, let's go to Port Perry. So
and the guys were your sons and your husband?
My 2 sons and my husband, yeah.
Wow.
So,
and here you are.
Yeah.
My goodness. Now, when you say you came home from work, what type of business were you in?
I'm a teacher.
Oh, you were a teacher?
Yeah, and I taught in Toronto. So my last 5 years, I was teaching, living up here and commuting to Toronto. I found out I had to learn to drive.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a long hike.
Yeah.
There was no 407 then either.
No, the GO train was good.
Yeah.
They used to have bus service.
Right. What did you teach?
I taught elementary level,
Okay.
so I've done everything from kindergarten to grade 8.
Right.
I had specialties in phys ed. I taught gym, swimming, and also in English as a second language. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you retired, you obviously got into volunteerism, because I've seen you around town too.
Well,
not
first
just here.
I signed up to be an occasional teacher, and I continued working in Toronto for another 15 years.
Like a supply teaching kind of
Yeah,
a,
supply.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, and then I got it. Well, I've always been interested in volunteering. My mother was a really great leader, example for me.
Right.
When we were quite young, like my brothers and I were in high school. My little brother was 5 when my father died.
Oh.
And it was hard for my mom to make things work, so she went on social assistance for a few years.
Right.
And she couldn't work then. They wouldn't allow her to work.
Okay.
So she volunteered at one of those ARC workshops, working with mentally challenged young people. And so that was my model.
Yeah.
And I found out that even when you don't have a lot of money to give, you can give your time and your energy.
Right, because that costs nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. So you got into that pretty well full strong after you retired from the teaching profession, from the supply teaching and that.
Yeah, well, I found as a teacher, like, you're volunteering all the time too.
Yes.
Like you're there early, you're taking teams during lunch. So
yeah, that's a profession that's changed a lot over the last 15, 20 years. Do you still miss it? Do you wish you were into teaching still?
Not a chance,
How do you really feel about that, Judy?
When the pandemic hit, there was, I thought I could not have done the job those teachers did.
Yeah.
But now I'm involved with retired women teachers. So I'm on the provincial board of our organization, and my area is the Greater Toronto area.
Right.
So I work with groups in those areas.
I remember when we first met, in the first times we met, and we're talking a number of years ago now, and we had a conversation about traveling. I think it was Norway that you backpacked through.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm thinking, who is this lady who can do everything? And to backpack through, I mean, I backpacked when I was young, but I stopped doing it when I was young because...
Yeah. Well, I didn't sleep out. I slept in hostels.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Norway. I'd love to go back to Norway.
Yeah.
That's a country I want to see more of.
You like traveling?
Yes.
You've traveled a fair bit.
As much as I could.
Yeah. So you're traveling, you're still traveling now, like post-pandemic? You're still planning any trips?
I haven't done any traveling in the last few years because we wanted to move. We wanted to sell the house and find another place to live. And so the money got frozen. However, we have now moved in, bought a condo, we are settled.
Oh, good.
And when the dust settles from
Right.
renovations, et cetera, then I'll know how much money's left. And my husband said to me, why were you, agree to move? Because I was enjoying where we were renting.
Right.
I said, so I can travel.
Right.
So
That's right.
I've got a new travel bag. I just bought one yesterday.
Ooh.
But yeah,
Where's your first trip going to be?
I think I'm going to have to go out west to Vancouver area because there's friends and family I'd like to
Right.
see. Yeah.
You going to backpack and stay in hostels?
No.
Those days are gone. There's a lot to be said for running water in a 5-star hotel with room service, right?
Yeah,
There's
I need a good bed these
Yeah,
days.
don't we all? Absolutely. So let's get back to the town hall a bit here. So you've been in a number of productions, right? What was your favorite? What stands out that you enjoyed the most from either working in, acting in, whatever?
Yeah. I think, like, as far as the music goes, I remember, so many shows, different music directors. It's been wonderful. When we did The Sound of Music,
Okay.
and I was one of the nuns, and
Right.
we were so good. Like, the singing was so good. Just
Right.
at rehearsal, you had hairs standing. It was
Really?
just incredible.
Yeah.
So I always remember that. And then the acting, Liz wrote a show, and I ended up as the star. And
This is Liz Austin?
oh yes,
Yeah.
and I ended up as the star, and it was
What show was that?
it was so hard. It was Once Upon a Winter's Eve,
Okay.
and I was the station master. And at one point, I couldn't remember my next line, and I looked over, and Barb Bone was right there beside me, and I said, and she just jumped like, I don't know how many pages in the script. Let's
Right.
sing a song.
Yeah.
And off all the musicians, I don't know, everybody, and they went right, they just carried on.
And you can't cut and redo it.
Yeah.
It's live. There's a couple hundred people
Yeah.
watching you.
Or we did Into the Woods,
Right.
and that goes really fast.
Yeah.
And I was up in the electrical area doing the giant's voice, and then I ran downstairs and came out on stage as a maid, and then I looked beside me at Prince Charming, and I said, and it was gone. My chance to say my line was gone.
Okay.
I was supposed to say, the knife that is sharp today may be dull by tomorrow. or
Right.
something.
Right.
Gone.
It's an amazing acting. I mean, I was in a theater production. I forget what it was called, but I think it was the first line was something. Come into my parlor, said the spy to the fly. That was my opening line. I played two spies, and one had a mustache and a Russian accent. The other didn't have a mustache. Well, halfway through, you know what happened, right? The accent went with the wrong. It was just a nightmare from heck. But I'm still here,
Yeah.
So it did get through it. So you also do music, right? You also sing, and you play a ukulele.
Yes. Well, I love to sing, so I'm in a choir in Uxbridge on Tuesday nights choir. But I also like to play, so on Wednesday nights I'm in the concert band, and I'm playing percussion in that.
Really?
Although I could play flute, like
You play flute as well?
I played flute in high school.
Really?
Yeah.
And you're also with the Durham Ukulele Group, right?
And then that combines my singing and
Right.
instrumental. I bring all percussion stuff to the ukulele jams.
Okay.
So, like if someone shows up and they don't have a ukulele to play, I'll hand them a.
Right. So you got a whole
tambourine
slew
or
of. Now, is your husband into the music as well?
Now he's a great listener.
Okay. All right. Was he a teacher as well, or was he a different profession?
No,
Okay.
but I did meet him in a school. But he was he
Yeah.
was doing some other kind of work in the school.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Interesting. So, so when you say he's a great listener, he has very little choice, right? Because.
Yeah, he really loves
he?
music, but
Nice.
he's a kind of singer who can't really match the tones,
I can identify with that.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised. So I want to bring back the ukulele thing a bit because I'm going to see, I know you brought a couple of ukuleles, or you said you always have them with you, so I'm going to see if you can teach me a song on a ukulele. You up for that?
Oh, I don't know, but okay, let's
well, you
give
were
it
a teacher,
try.
right? So I know you have the patience. And I think Gina's here somewhere with a couple of ukuleles.
I'll pretend it's kindergarten 101.
You're going to have to, I want the big one. Thank you. Okay. Oh, it's shiny.
Okay, this purple one's fine.
It's like a
for
small
me.
guitar.
It is. It's just like a guitar, but it's missing the two bass strings.
Okay.
Exact same chord
That's too bad.
formation.
Oh, I see.
But I'm going to make it easy for you.
Okay. Now, sorry, I just wanted to see the song we're doing here. It's called Tiptoe Through the Tulips. Is that because I'm Dutch? Or is it because...
yes.
Yeah, of course, yeah. It's also a Tiny Tim song. And
we don't want to think about that.
Oh, I do. I love Tiny Tim.
Yeah,
you could be my Miss Vicky.
Yeah, here's your pointer finger goes on there, and it rolls down. It rolls up and it rolls down.
That's easy.
So you don't have to lift it. You just roll it.
That's
easy. And finger here, strum down and down.
Wow.
4 beats.
Am I good? Oh.
And here we go.
Tiptoe through the window, by the window. That's where I will be. Come tiptoe through the tulips with me.
You're doing great.
I feel like
wonderful.
Tiny Tim. You ready?
No.
Tiptoe through my pillow. And that's as far as that's going to go.
Shadow of a willow
Tree. I lost it already. Through the tulips with me. Why don't you take this part that I don't have a clue how it goes?
Knee deep in flowers we'll stray, we'll keep.
You don't need me at all.
The showers away, and if I
Kiss you in the garden, in the moonlight, will you pardon me and tiptoe through the tulips with me? Oh, we are amazing. Let's do more duets together going forward, shall we? Judy, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a pleasure. It was fun. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
That was great. And thank you all for watching and listening to my ukulele. Please join us every month right here on The Story Behind the Person on Rogers TV. Welcome back. My guest today, as I mentioned, is Graeme Powell, an actor as well as I was going to say songwriter, but that's not right. Okay. Sorry.
Not recently. I haven't written any songs.
I have a red tie.